Hello, my dears. My name is Mariana, and welcome to my channel. So today, we're going to talk about the one, the only, Carl Jung. So if you've paid attention at all, you know that I love Jung. No matter how you begin your spiritual journey, you will inevitably encounter Jung. And there's a good reason for this. Jung is one of the forefathers of modern psychology, but he went beyond psychology as we know it today. He dived into the soul, into parapsychology, into the occult, into the synchronicity. He looked at so many things that are so fascinating and so taboo. But we witches don't really care about taboos, do we? What Carl Jung believed in that was so revolutionary was a soul. He was willing to look in the corners of reality that many people wouldn't dare to go. He believed magic was real, and that is why he is so essential for witches. He believed that the world in here and the world out there were not separate realities. And as witches, we believe this too. We believe that we can participate with nature, that we are one with the earth, and that our magics will have real effect in the world. Smart witches who want a real, authentic spirituality need a little Jung in their lives because he opens us to the mysteries we already know exist and explains them to us in a way that is really beautiful and really powerful. So stick around with me on this journey. You will absolutely not regret it. Make sure to subscribe so you get more videos like this. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram so you get all these types of discussions every day, all the time, because I have very little boundaries with my time. And before we really dive into these 6 fields of Jungian study, I want to let you know I'm hosting a seminar on this very topic. It's going to be all about Jung, synchronicity, archetypes, the collective unconscious, parapsychology, the divine feminine, witchcraft, the occult alchemy, everything. I want to take all the knowledge I've compiled over my years of study and bring it to you in a succinct, really easily digestible package. So go check out that seminar. It's going to be March and April, and it's going to be sliding scale pricing too. So what's really holding you back? And as always, patrons get a discount. And let's get into some Jung. So unfortunately, Jung has been a little co-opted by gender essentialists and, wannabe armchair philosophers who are obsessed with Jordan Peterson. But the beauty about Jung's work is that it is so adaptable no matter what background you come from. The heart of his theory is a devotion to self, to the soul. He allows for nature and symbols to be a really prominent part of our psychic landscape, of the lexicon of how we engage with the earth and how we become whole human beings. He does not try to solve the great mysteries of life. He just tries to prove that they exist. So here are the 6 fields of Jungian study that you really want to dive into to blend into your own magic, to enhance it and beautify it and make it really smart. Number 1 is the collective unconscious. One of Jung's foundational theories was the collective unconscious. Now, he did not come up with the idea of an unconscious itself. That was a Freudian idea in which Freud was trying to explain how we have complexes, how we have impulses and desires that remain repressed in us that we're not aware of in our conscious minds. But Jung took this a step further, and he thought if there is a personal unconscious which holds our own complexes, then there must be a collective unconscious to hold our collective complexes. These are the universal realities that we all participate in that make us human. Jung himself writes, "The collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every individual." Understanding the collective unconscious is so important for witches because we are always participating with the universe, and we need to understand what it is that connects us all. We need to understand that our magic is tapping into the collective web that unites all humanity. The collective unconscious is our tether to oneness, to nature, and to each other. Number 2, archetypes. With this understanding of the collective unconscious, we can now get into the really rich and beautiful topic of archetypes. Archetypes is not something discovered by Jung, but it is something first outlined from him, and he originally called them primordial images. He first glimpsed archetypes when he began studying the mythologies from around the world that had certain ideas or images that kept reappearing, although they may have been dressed in different clothes or called different names. Essentially, the archetypes are the archaic symbols that exist in the collective unconscious and do not change. They are independent of time and culture and name. Archetypes are so important for witches. So much of the work we do comes from these symbols that rise from our collective unconscious, that are things that we have known for eternity. If you practice any form of divination, you're going to have a really strong relationship to these archetypes. You're going to have to be able to identify them no matter how they're presenting. This is the strength of all diviners, that they can recognize an archetype and be able to interpret it for whoever needs to get in touch with that archetypal energy. The archetypes are the containers of the deepest psychospiritual wisdom that we can get in touch with in our lives on this planet. And so really understanding them, really understanding how they function in our psyches and how they can be our great teachers is so essential. So I highly, highly recommend reading more on that. The third topic is synchronicity. This is perhaps the most exciting of the Jungian topics for witches. Jung's definition of synchronicity is meaningful coincidence. Basically, Jung believed that things could connect to each other without a causal link. So this could be connected to that, even if nothing happened in between. This is because we're all connected by this collective unconscious, that there is this invisible web that connects us all. And so the inner landscape, the inner psychic reality can get projected into the outer physical world. Basically, the world can react to what's happening inside of us. This is the premise for how manifestation works and how we can receive signs and symbols in our daily lives that actually have profound psychological meaning. This is also how we can explain intuition and our psychicness and all the intuitive abilities that we don't have any scientific explanation for, but we know deeply are real. It is so important to understand why these things work and how we can look for deeper meaning in these synchronistic happenings in our lives. Number 4, parapsychology. Jung was a true believer in the paranormal, and this was probably because he had several experiences as a young man, which were pretty weird. Read Memory Streams Reflections, you won't regret it. He also believed in intuitive abilities like precognition and having visions, and actually, Jung had many visions throughout his lifetime, and his last deathbed vision actually predicted the end of the earth, so, that's exciting. But Jung actually compiled his own psychic and intuitive experiences in his journals, which have been compiled and called the Red Book. It is such a cool book. I highly, highly, highly recommend you check it out. It's pretty big, it's pretty expensive, so it's not accessible for everyone, but at least do some research. You'll be in love with it, I promise. The 5th field of study is alchemy and occult mysticism. So the study that Jung was perhaps most interested in was actually the occult. He discovered early modern alchemy and just absolutely fell in love with its symbolism and saw so much correspondence to the psychospiritual journey. He was not so much interested in the pseudo-chemistry of the alchemists as much as their quest to integrate all things into one substance to create the Philosopher's Stone, which he believed was the symbolic journey of individuation. Now, individuation is a little hard to define, but it's essentially the path of becoming most wholly who you are, of integrating shadow and your complexes and the archetypes that linger inside of you, and coming out of it most authentically yourself, as whole as you can possibly ever be. Although we don't always know it, as modern witches, this is what we are trying to alchemize in ourselves. We're trying to bring ourselves to our fullness and use magic and symbolism and the occult practices of our ancestors to facilitate that. Bringing in this ancient and Renaissance symbolism really opens us to the mystical mysteries that we're all trying to engage with. It gives us a symbolic path to follow and really deepens our own craft, exploring different aspects of how we can make our magic more authentic. Jung outlines everything. He is very clear and very creative with how to bridge the alchemical and the modern spiritual world. So I can't recommend diving into this stuff enough. Finally, the last Jungian study you should get into is the topic of the missing fourth. So Jung was a Christian and he believed deeply in religious symbolism. And so he contemplated the Trinity a lot. And what he decided was that there was something missing, that there was a fundamental component that needed to be part of the Trinity that had been left out. He called this the missing fourth. And what he thought the missing fourth was the feminine. He believed that the Trinity, the triune of masculine divinity, could not be balanced without a feminine counterpart. Now, while Jung's understanding of the archetypal feminine was kind of limited, this is New York, baby. Everybody who wants to live here, don't. Now, while Jung's own understanding of the archetypal feminine was somewhat limited because of the time in which he was doing his research, and also because of his own male perspective, his work is the foundation of so much research and investigation of the feminine of more modern feminist scholarship. Based on his work with the archetypes and how they could be repressed in the collective psyche, we now have the tools to recover the divine feminine. Why is this so important for witches? Because witchcraft is essentially a feminine spiritual practice. The feminine has always represented nature. It's always been engaged with the material, with the earth underneath us. This is why that aspect of spirituality has been repressed for so long, because the feminine has been repressed. So as witches who work with the earth, who ask the stars for guidance, who are open to the mysterious cooperation between the physical reality and the spiritual reality, the topic of the feminine is one we cannot avoid. I highly recommend reading the feminist scholars who came after Jung, who explore this topic of the missing fourth. And you know what? I've already put together a list of these books, so you should go read them. So those are the 6 topics of Jungian study that all witches should get into. I hope you found something interesting there, and I hope you dive into it. And if you do, let me know in the comments. I love to hear people's stories. Go check out my Patreon. I am raffling off a free reading with me, so why not enter that? So go do some reading, go do some research, and have a beautiful, meaningful day. This video took me 4 hours to film, so I'm feeling great, and I'm gonna go binge Outlander and eat a whole bag of sweet potato chips.